All right, so we're moving on to our first topic from ninth grade. Uh, we're going to start with classifying polynomials. This is a topic that, when it comes to ninth grade math, is in math, ninth grade algebra B, math B. So if you signed up to skip part A and part B and start with part C next year, this is a topic that you would be skipping. So we're going to go over it to make sure you know what it's all about, so that you'll have that knowledge even though you're skipping that class next year. So classifying polynomials, this is something where you will definitely need to go get paper. You'll need notes. You'll need to write these down so that you have them, because without that, you're not going to be able to do the assignments. So we're starting a new grading period. So the activities we do with this will be some of the first grade you get. And the good thing with this is we're not going to have any IXLs for a while. So it's all going to be actual classwork posted on Google Classroom for you to do. So you need to make sure you have your notes, you take them so that you're able to do that. Now, classifying polynomials. What are polynomials? A polynomial is an expression with one or more terms separated by addition or subtraction. All right, so what that means is, all right, some examples on here. It's an expression with one or more terms. So a term would be like, if you have x, that's a term. So x plus 2, that's 2 terms. All right, so a polynomial is an expression with one or more terms. So this would be a polynomial. If we had x squared minus x plus 2, that's a polynomial. It's an expression. There's no equal sign. It has one or more terms. So this one has 3 terms, and they're separated by addition or subtraction. So we've been dealing with polynomials the last couple of years. You just didn't know they were called polynomials. Now, properties of polynomials. And normally I would give lots of time if I was teaching this in class for students to write the notes, but you can pause the video. So when you need to write something down, pause the video, write it down. So you need to have this wrote down, this definition. Then we come down to properties of polynomials. So what can polynomials have? They can have constants. So they can have 6, they can have -4, they can have square root of 3, they can have whole numbers, integers, they can have variables, x, y, z. All variables are fine. All exponents are fine. Those are all polynomials. What they can't have fractions for exponents, and they can't have negative exponents. So you're going to get questions that might say, okay, you have x squared minus 3. Is that a polynomial? All right, we have a constant. We have an exponent. It's a 2. Yes, it's a polynomial. Now, if this was x squared minus 3 and the 3 was to the negative first power, then is that a polynomial? No, it has an exponent that's a negative. All right. Can't have division by a variable. If you have 4 over x, if the x or y or a or b or any other variables in the bottom of a fraction, if it's the denominator, then it's not a polynomial. You cannot have a radical, an x or a variable, any variable, under a radical, under a square root symbol. All right, so you're going to have questions. That's one of the things you're going to have to do, where it's going to give you, here are different examples. So if you have the square root of 3, is that a polynomial? Yes, you can have the square root of a number plus x. Is that a polynomial? Yep, all that's fine. All right, x to the 1/3. Is that a polynomial? No, because you can't have a fraction as the exponent. All right, so make sure you have these wrote down so that you know the difference between is it or is it not a polynomial, because you'll have to do that on your assignment. If you need to pause the video and write those down, go for it. So, names of polynomials. This is another thing you're going to have to do. You're going to have to name what type of polynomial is it. So there are monomials when you have one term. So if you just have 5x or if you just have 7, or if you just have y, or if you just have 3ab. Since they're all together, that's a term. So this is just one term. That's just one term. So one term is called a monomial. So what do you think it's called if you have two terms? That's called a binomial. So you've got 5x plus 7. You have two separate things. Remember, two things separated by a plus sign or a minus sign. So binomials have two terms. If it has three terms, we call it a trinomial. So that has three different things in it. So it's a trinomial. And then if you have one or more, it's a polynomial. So it could have 4, 5, 6. Technically, these three are also polynomials. Polynomials just means you have one or more terms. All right. But if it's 1, 2, or 3, they want you to be more specific. All right. So you'll get a question that will say you have 5ab minus 2. Name that polynomial. Well, there's one term, and then there's two terms. They're separated by a plus or a minus. So two terms means it's a binomial. So you're going to have to tell, is it a polynomial, yes or no? You'll have to name what type of polynomial it is. And then the next thing you're going to have to do is find the degree. What's the degree of the polynomial? All right, so I definitely pause the video, write these things down so you have them. The degree is the value of the highest exponent. When there are more than one variables in a term, add the exponents to get the degree. So if you have this right here, if they give you, okay, you have 7x to the second power y, what's the degree? All you do is add up the exponents. So the x has a 2, the y don't have anything, which means it's a 1. So 2 plus 1, the degree is 3. That's it. So pause it, write this down, and now we're going to do some examples of this. So if you have 2x to the third power, what's the degree? Well, you just look and say, okay, what's the exponents? All right, a 2, anytime you have a whole number, the degree is 0. So you don't add the exponent on the 2. So all you do is look at the variables. So it's a 3, so what's the degree? 3, so your answer would be 3. What if it was 2x to the third power, y to the fourth power? Then you would say, okay, 3 plus 4, okay, the degree is 7. You're just adding up the exponents. What if you had that? Well, you would go, okay, what do I got? A 3, a 4, there's nothing here, which means it's a 1. So 3 plus 4 is 7, plus 1 is 8. So that's what the degree is. You add the exponents together, and that's your degree. Now, if you have more than one term, let's say you have 2x to the second power plus 3xy to the second power plus 7x to the fifth power. You're going to look at each one separately and see, okay, what is the degree? So what's the degree of this term? All right, there's the x. It has a 2, so the degree is 2. Then you look at the next one. All right, I have an x, so that's a 1. 1 plus 2, so the degree is 3. What's the degree of the last term? The x has a 5, so it's 5. Now, the students in the algebra, in the in-person class were like, okay, so then we would add these together. No, what you do is you find a degree of each one, and then whichever one is the biggest, that is the answer. So the degree of the first term is 2. The degree of the middle term is 3. The degree of the last term is 5. Which one's biggest? 5. So the degree is 5. All right, let's look at another one. You've got a2, b minus 3, a to the fourth plus 8, a 2, b 3. All right, so what's the degree of the first term? 2, 1, so that's a 3. What's the degree of this term? 4. And then what's the degree of this one? 2 plus 3 is 5. So what's the biggest number? 5. So the degree is 5. And that's all you do with degrees. The degree doesn't get any harder than that. That's all you're doing. Look at each one separately, and then you figure out which one is the biggest. Then you've got to be able to write it in standard form. Standard form means you take the terms and write them in order from the highest degree to the lowest. So you already know how to find a degree. Now all you do is put them in order from the biggest to the lowest. So pause the video, write that down, and then we'll do some examples over here. So all you're doing, same thing you were just doing. Let's say you have 7x second y3 minus 2 x to the fourth plus 5 y to the nothing, just y. So all you do is look at each one, and so actually no, because that's not going to rearrange anything. So let's put y to the 7th. So you look at each one and you go, okay, what's the degree of this one? All right, 2 plus 3, its degree is 5. What's the degree of this one? X to the fourth, so it's 4. What's the degree of this one? Y to the 7th, so it's 7. So then you just rewrite it in order. So which one's the biggest degree? 7. So positive 5, y to the 7th goes in the front. Then the next highest degree is 5. So positive 7x squared, y to the third is next. And then lastly, 4 minus, so it's minus 2x to the fourth. So all you're doing is looking at it, find a degree of each one, which we just talked about, and then put them in order from the highest degree to the lowest degree. And that's putting it in standard form. All right, and then the leading coefficient. The leading coefficient is just once you put it in standard form, it's the value of the coefficient in front of the term with the highest degree. So all that means is once you put it in standard form, the very first number is the leading coefficient. So that would be, you've got 3x to the second plus 4x to the fifth plus 2x to the third. So first you got to put them in standard form. So what's the degree of this? X to the second, so it's 2. What's the degree of this one? X to the fifth, so it's 5. What's the degree? X to the third, so it's 3. Put them in order. So 4x to the fifth plus 2x to the third plus 3x to the second. So you put them in order from biggest degree to smallest. And now what's the leading coefficient? All you do is look and see, okay, what is the number in the very front? 4. Leading coefficient is 4. That's all that is. That's all it means. So put them in order, put them in standard form, and then just see what's the number in the very front. Now the other class, they asked, what if that didn't have a number? So you ended up looking at it and it looked like that. Well, you should know if there's no number in front of a variable, that means it's a what? It's a 1. So what's the leading coefficient? 1. think that's it. Yep, that's it. So just to recap, on your assignments, you're going to have to be able to tell, is it a polynomial, yes or no, based on this part. Name the polynomial. So is it a monomial, binomial, trinomial, or is it more than that? So it's just a polynomial. And then features, find a degree, be able to write it in standard form, and be able to name the leading coefficient. All right, so that is what we have today. That's our first thing. So then we'll have some assignments over the next few days to practice it. And then we'll move on to our next topic, which will be adding and subtracting polynomials. So if you have any questions, come to the Google Meet or email me and we will talk about it later.